My wife's death was ruled an accidental drowning. It was only while sorting through her belongings that I found a copy of a property deed tucked inside an old journal. When I walked into that condo, the shock was paralyzing. The place was warm and romantic, filled with expensive furniture, a plush rug, and a crystal chandelier that glittered even under a layer of dust. It was a world away from the cramped, crumbling old house we lived in. The walls were covered with photos of her first love, and their twin children. On the desk was a hastily scrawled note. Julian, since you passed, every day has been a living hell. I can't bear it. My duty to my mother is done, and the children are grown. There's nothing left for me here. I'm coming to find you, my love, wherever you are. I stumbled out of the room, my only thought to go and claw open her grave. But the rage and grief were a fire in my chest. A wave of sickness washed over me, and I coughed up a mouthful of blood before my vision went black and I collapsed. When I opened my eyes, I was back. 10 years in the past. The call from the police, informing me they'd found my wife Eliza's body in the Cedar Creek Reservoir, came while I was still at the office, hammering out last-minute changes to a client's proposal. I was over 40, drowning in stress, hunched over my desk like a tired old bull well past 10 at night. At that moment, my own misery felt more potent than any ghosts. My first thought was that it was a scam. Get lost, I snarled into the phone. Scammers like you can drop dead. The man on the other and didn't get angry. His voice remained cold as he professionally recited his badge number and the precinct. He explained that a night fisherman had discovered my wife's body and that they'd found her ID in her wallet. He asked me to come to the scene as soon as possible. I hung up, half believing, half dismissing it. During the entire drive to the reservoir, I called Eliza's phone again and again, but it went straight to voicemail. 40 minutes later, I arrived at the location the police had given me. The night was pitch black. The sound of the reservoir's current and the cries of unseen animals were unnerving. I stumbled on the uneven ground, drawn toward the only cluster of lights in the darkness. And there I saw her, a woman lying stiff and straight on the riverbank. She was wearing the white blouse and black slacks she wore most days, now stained with mud and grime. Her shoes were gone, her bare feet crisscrossed with cuts. Blood trickled from her nose and mouth. When I saw her face, I froze, feeling like I'd been struck by lightning. It was really her, my wife Eliza. After a full investigation, crime scene analysis, autopsy, and a review of the security footage from near the reservoir, foul play was ruled out. The medical examiner found alcohol in her system, and the official cause of death was declared an accidental drowning while intoxicated. Our two children, hearing the news, rushed back from their studies abroad. I was overwhelmed with grief, my blood pressure spiking so dangerously that I collapsed several times and ended up in the ICU. The kids handled all of the arrangements for their mother's funeral. By the time I was discharged from the hospital, Eliza was already in the ground. It was only when they took me to the cemetery that I was hit with another shock. They had buried Eliza in the same plot as their biological father, Julian, but she and Julian had been divorced for over 20 years. I stared blankly at the twins standing beside me. It's what Mom wanted, my son Leo said flatly. He pulled a thick envelope from his bag and handed it to me. This is her will. Her lawyer gave it to us and Mia when we got back. You should read it. My hands trembled as I took it. Just as Leo said, the will stipulated that she be buried with Julian. Leo continued, his voice devoid of emotion. The last page is the asset distribution. My sister and I are the sole beneficiaries of all her life insurance policies. Her stocks and investment fund were purchased before she married you, so they're considered her personal assets. She left all of that to us, too. As for the house, Leo paused. Mom left you your 50%, but you'll have to buy out her half from us at the current market rate. Or you can sell the house and give me and my sister half the money. Mia, who had been silent until now, finally looked at me. Her expression held a trace of guilt as her lips trembled. Dad, Leo, and I have our green cards now. Once everything here is settled, we won't be coming back. Please, take care of yourself. I looked at the two children I had raised for 20 years, not even realizing when the tears started streaming down my face. A painful lump formed in my throat, my voice so raw it was barely a whisper. How could you do this to me? I'd been married to Eliza for 2 decades. I became a stepfather to Mia and Leo when they were not even 5 years old. I loved their mother with all my heart, weathering every storm with her. I did my best for the children, raising them as my own. I cared for my mother-in-law, treating her with the utmost respect. And in the end, they had schemed and stripped me of everything. I stumbled back home and pushed the door open, feeling hollowed out. Everything inside was just as Eliza had left it. We had lived in this house for nearly 20 years. I bought the pre-owned house with money my parents gave me the second year we were married. It was over 30 years old, run down and cramped, less than 900 square feet. At one point, all 5 of us, including my mother-in-law, had lived here. All these years, I'd pinched every penny to pay for Mia and Leo's education abroad, to cover the dialysis treatments for my mother-in-law's chronic kidney failure. I kept telling myself things would get better. It would all be worth it. But in the end, I realized I was nothing more than a tool for their family to use. My eyes were vacant as I moved like a puppet through the house, gathering Eliza's things to throw them all away. As I cleared out her closet, I found an old journal at the very bottom, tucked beneath a stack of clothes. Inside it was a yellowed piece of paper, a copy of a property deed. The owner's name was Eliza. I went to the address on the document. A locksmith checked my ID before drilling the lock and opening the door for me. The moment I stepped inside, the shock was overwhelming. This was clearly the love nest she had shared with Julian. The walls were covered in photos of them with their children. The decor was romantic and cozy. Expensive furniture, a luxurious rug, and a crystal chandelier that glittered even under a layer of dust. It was a world away from the cramped, crumbling old house we lived in. I forced my legs to move, opening the door to the master bedroom. It was huge, with a walk-in closet, a vanity, a king-size bed, and a bright, spacious bay window. The closet was filled with neatly organized, expensive-looking clothes. Next door was her study. What I saw there felt like a stake through my heart. The walls were a timeline of their family's happy moments, from the kids' elementary school days to their college years. They had traveled the world together, visiting all the places I had dreamed of but never dared to spend money on. I collapsed into the chair at her desk. An open notebook on the desk had a single line written on it. "Julian, since you passed 2 years ago, every day has been a living hell. I can't bear it. My duty to my mother is done, and the children are grown. There's nothing left for me here. I'm coming to find you, my love, wherever you are." So it wasn't an accidental drowning after all. She had killed herself to be with him. I tore the paper to shreds in a blind rage. I don't know how long I sat there before I managed to push myself to my feet. I stumbled out, my only thought to go and claw open her grave. But the rage and grief were a fire in my chest. A wave of sickness washed over me, and I coughed up a mouthful of blood before my vision went black and I collapsed. When I opened my eyes again, I was sitting at a table laden with food, surrounded by a cacophony of noise. The clatter of plates, the chatter and laughter of people, it all washed over me in a tidal wave. It took me a long moment to realize where I was. This was the celebration dinner after Mia and Leo had finished middle school. They had both been accepted into the best magnet high school in the city, not only with full scholarships for all 3 years, but also with a $600 prize each. At that moment, Eliza was leading the kids from table to table, accepting congratulations. Everyone was gushing about what a brilliant university professor she was to have raised such outstanding children. Julian, her ex-husband, sat next to my mother-in-law, a proud smile on his face as he watched them, looking every bit the part of the honored father. I picked up my wine glass and drained it. The cool, slightly tart liquid sliding down my throat was a sharp reminder that this was not a dream. As I was still trying to process it all, a snide voice piped up beside me. "Warren, you really are a lucky guy. Your reputation was in the gutter, and you still managed to marry a wonderful woman like Eliza. And you got a pair of brilliant kids out of the deal without any of the work. Some guys have all the luck." I looked over. The speaker was Kevin, a former classmate from college who was 2 years behind Eliza. He now taught in the same philosophy department at the university as her. He'd spoken loudly enough for several people to hear. Julian glanced over, an eyebrow raised and a smirk playing on his lips, settling in to watch the show. Kevin clucked his tongue. "I mean, how does it happen? I heard 10 years ago your own father couldn't even pay a woman to marry you. Who would have thought Eliza would have such bad taste? So many guys were after her, and she picked you. There's no justice in the world." I looked at his face, twisted with jealousy, and found it both pathetic and ridiculous. I knew he'd had a crush on Eliza for years, only to be beaten to the punch by his good friend, Julian. By the time he found out, they had already been together for 2 months, and their friendship was over. Not long after Kevin got married, Julian suddenly divorced Eliza, abandoned his family, and moved abroad. Kevin had always been bitter about not marrying her himself. That's why he always targeted me, constantly poking at my old wounds. In my previous life, I was ashamed of what happened to me. I let it define me, so I would always just lower my head and endure it. He'd said these exact words to me back then, and I had swallowed my anger. It was the kids' graduation party. Their teachers and friends were there, along with Eliza's colleagues. I didn't want to make a scene and become a laughingstock. But now none of that mattered. Smack! I slammed my chopsticks down on the table. You're damn right I'm lucky. I shot back, my voice loud and clear. What? Are you jealous I married Eliza? Tell you what, I can pass this good fortune on to you. Fulfill that little decade-long crush you've been nursing. Then you can stop buzzing around me every chance you get, whispering about how I don't deserve her. Kevin's face went white. He shot a panicked look toward his wife. Warren, are you crazy? What the hell are you talking about? I laughed coldly. What am I talking about? You think I'm blind? The flirty texts you send her? The way your eyes follow her around like a lovesick puppy? You bring up that kidnapping crap just to humiliate me. Yeah, I was kidnapped. I was assaulted and it left me sterile. But even with all that, Eliza was the one who chased after me. If you got a problem with it, take it up with her. Everyone was staring at us now. Kevin's wife fixed him with a dark, penetrating gaze. Eliza rushed over, glaring daggers at Kevin before grabbing my arm. What do you think you're doing? She hissed under her breath. Do you know what day this is? Why are you bringing up that ancient history in front of all our friends and family? I yanked my arm away from her grip, my face a cold mask. What did I say? He's the one who starts it every single time. Are you blind? Kevin's wife, her face grim, walked over to him. She hauled him out of his chair and then forced a strained smile at Eliza and me. Warren, Eliza, I am so sorry. I just got an urgent call from work. Kevin and I have to go. We'll visit another time. With that, she dragged a stunned Kevin out of the banquet hall. An awkward silence fell over the room. The people around us looked at me with complicated expressions. Julian, who had been enjoying the spectacle, now stood up. He moved to Eliza's side and looked at me with a soft smile, but his eyes were full of provocation and scorn. His voice, however, was gentle and chiding. Warren, nobody's saying anything about your past, but you don't have to broadcast it in public, do you? You're Eliza's husband now. When you say those things, where does that leave her? Even if you don't care about Eliza, Mia and Leo still call you dad. How are they supposed to face their classmates after this? I followed his gaze to where Mia and Leo were standing a short distance away. Mia's hands were clenched into fists, her eyes burning with rage. Leo's eyes were brimming with tears, his expression a mixture of disgust and resentment. I remembered them at the cemetery, waving Eliza's will in my face, pushing me to sell the house so they could get their money. A cold snort escaped me. Their real dad isn't dead. Who am I to play that role for them? Maybe we can talk about it after their real dad kicks the bucket. Julian was speechless, his pale face flushing red. He looked at Eliza, his eyes wide and pleading for help. A flicker of something sharp and fierce crossed Eliza's face. She grabbed my arm again, her grip so tight I thought she might break the bone. Warren, that's enough, she seethed quietly. Don't make this ugly for everyone. If you're angry, you can take it out on me when we get home. I looked straight into her eyes, a tidal wave of hatred crashing over me. Sensing the tension, some friends came over to smooth things over. Eliza, come on, we need to ask you for parenting tips. My son is failing half his classes. Tell us how you do it. Soon, the hall was filled with noise again. I sat back down, watching everything with cold detachment. A dull ache spread through my chest. I poured another glass of red wine and down in one go. I knew the best thing to do was to divorce Eliza, get away from this parasitic family, and live my own life. But they had deceived me for a lifetime. How could I just let go of all this hatred? The party ended, and the guests dispersed. Soon, it was just me and Eliza's family of 4 left in the hall. My mother-in-law's coarse voice cut through the quiet. Warren, you may not have any shame, but we do. Are you afraid people don't know about your sordid little past? You have to broadcast it for the whole world to hear. Do you think that's something to be proud of? With a reputation like yours, and being sterile on top of it, I wouldn't have approved of you even if it was your first marriage. A spineless loser like you is not worthy of our Eliza. Mom, Eliza cut her off sharply. I told you not to bring up the past anymore. Why are you starting again? I looked at my mother-in-law, who was healthy and full of vigor. At this point in time, she hadn't yet been diagnosed with chronic kidney failure. She didn't need to suck up to me, to sweet-talk me into paying for her treatments and driving her to the hospital for dialysis every week. In the last life, after her diagnosis, I took care of her for nearly 8 years. Every Saturday, without fail, I drove her to dialysis. I cooked separate, specialized meals for her. Low protein, low salt, low potassium. She passed away peacefully in the hospital 2 months before Eliza killed herself. The duty to my mother, Eliza mentioned her suicide note. I was the one who fulfilled it for her. A cold laugh escaped my lips. If I hadn't been injured and lost my ability to have children, You think I would have given Eliza a second glance? You think your daughter is some kind of saint? Even her professorship is a sham. If my father hadn't pulled every string he had, calling in favors from his expert colleagues to recommend her, she'd still be struggling as a lecturer. Don't you dare act like you're holier than thou after selling your souls. My words hung in the air, instantly chilling the room. My mother-in-law, clearly not expecting me to lash out so directly, turned a shade of purple, her body trembling with rage. Eliza, standing beside her, flinched as if I'd struck a nerve. "Have you lost your mind today?" she yelled. "Just because Kevin said a few words to you, you have to go nuclear?" Leo chimed in, his voice shrill. "Today was my sister's party. What did you have to talk about? About being assaulted? How am I supposed to face my friends at school now? Why do you always have to ruin everything?" I took a deep breath, fighting down the inferno threatening to erupt from my chest. "That's right. I've lost my mind. What are you going to do about it?" Then I turned to Leo. "Why should I care if you can hold your head up at school? I've never complained about your ugly, short, pug-nosed face embarrassing me in front of my colleagues." Leo wasn't exactly a handsome kid. Although he and Mia were twins, Mia looked like their father, while Leo was the spitting image of his grandfather. Leo froze, then his face crumpled. "Wah!" he howled, turning and running out of the banquet hall on his short legs. I had no energy left to argue with him. I grabbed my bag, stood up, and walked out. Outside the hotel, the sky was completely dark. The summer night air carried a slight breeze, but it felt sticky on my skin. I kicked a loose stone on the sidewalk, my mind a chaotic mess. The memories of what had happened to me washed over me again, and I felt like I was drowning. I had been assaulted. During my senior year of college, while I was interning, I was followed after a late shift and dragged into a dark alley. The city wasn't as safe back then. A lot of the smaller alleys didn't have security cameras. A hand clamped over my mouth. I fought with everything I had, and in the struggle, I managed to ram my elbow hard into the man's ribs. That only enraged him. He threw me to the ground, but after 2 attempts, he found he couldn't perform. Cursing, he pulled up his pants and started kicking me viciously over and over in the groin. Then he left me there, discarded like a piece of trash next to a dumpster. My parents searched for me all night. When the doctor told them that my testicles were severely ruptured, my bladder was damaged, and they had to be removed to save my life, my mother fainted on the spot. My father's hair seemed to turn gray overnight. The man was sentenced to 10 years in prison, but the damage he did to me was permanent. I had to use a catheter for 3 months and underwent a full year of therapy before I could even begin to function again. After that, I was consumed by self-loathing, insecurity, and shame. I didn't dare to date. I felt I wasn't worthy of anyone. Until I met Eliza. She was like a light shining into my bleak existence. I thought she was my salvation, the beacon that would guide me out of the darkness. That's why I threw myself into our marriage, willing to give everything I had. Even when my mother-in-law was cruel, even when my stepchildren, influenced by her and their father, resented me and acted out, I cherished our marriage. I never could have imagined she was Satan hiding behind a radiant facade. She was just another hand pulling me down into the abyss. She destroyed me, turning all those beautiful memories into blades she used to gut me. It was almost midnight by the time I got home. The house was dark. They were probably asleep. A rustling sound came from the balcony, strangely eerie in the dead of night. I flipped on the light and went to check. There I saw a narrow-mouthed bamboo basket, covered by a fine mesh woven bag. The rustling was coming from inside the basket. A sense of déjà vu washed over me, and the hair on my arms stood on end. The basket was full of venomous snakes. In my past life, after Mia and Leo's middle school results came out, my mother-in-law insisted it was a miracle from a prayer she'd made. She had somehow acquired over a dozen venomous snakes and was planning to take the children into the hills to release them as a sign of gratitude. When I found out, I tried repeatedly to stop her, telling her to buy some fish to release if she was so set on it. She told me that you couldn't eat the type of animal you release for good karma. She still wanted to eat fish, but she would certainly never eat a venomous snake. Seeing that it was useless to argue, I waited until she left for her early morning walk in the park, then took the basket of snakes straight to a wildlife rescue center. The staff there turned pale when they opened the bag. They were all highly venomous western rattlesnakes. Because rattlesnakes are a protected species in our state, the staff immediately called the police. I was subjected to an hour-long lecture and had to sign a statement promising never to illegally buy or sell wildlife again before they let me go. When my mother-in-law found out, she threw a massive tantrum, screaming that I had ruined her spiritual progress. This time, I turned around and went back inside. I wasn't going to get involved. The next morning, as soon as my mother-in-law got back with breakfast, she started barking orders at Eliza. Hurry up and get Mia and Leo out of bed. We have to go to the hills for the release ceremony. Eliza rubbed her temples, annoyed. Mom, stop filling the kids' heads with that superstitious nonsense. Her mother shot her a glare. What do you know? If I hadn't prayed for you back then, do you think you would have gotten into college? And the kids' test scores? That was all thanks to my prayers. Eliza, realizing it was a pointless argument, said nothing more. She just frowned and went to knock on Mia and Leo's doors. After the kids had washed up and sat down at the table, my mother-in-law began portioning out the breakfast she'd bought. Everyone got a share, except me. I didn't care. I went to my room, grabbed my ID, our marriage certificate, and my passport and slammed the door on my way out. I took a cab straight to the county records office. Just as I expected, a 2,500 square foot property was registered under Eliza's name. The registration date was 3 years ago, the same year Julian had moved back from abroad. The mortgage lien had been released just 2 months ago, which meant the loan had been paid off early. I had the clerk stamp the official search record. On the way from the records office to my work, I kept thinking, how could someone as meticulous as Eliza allow a property to be so openly registered in her name? In my last life, all I had found was a photocopy of the deed. This was a woman who had listed only her own children as beneficiaries on her insurance policies and had schemed to take half of the house I had paid for. How could she possibly be willing to let me get half of this condo, which was already worth nearly $1 million? Right after our morning meeting, the landline in my office rang. I put on speaker. Mia's frantic, crying voice filled the room. Dad, you have to come quick. Grandma got bit by a snake during the release. She passed out, and I can't move her. We're on the trails in the South Hills. You know, where we had that picnic last time, by that huge rock. Mom's not answering her phone. Dad, I'm so scared. The snakes are slithering everywhere. Please come save me. Get away. Don't come over here. Her terrified screams echoed through the phone. Dad, did you hear me? Can you please hurry? Her crying started again. My hand instinctively reached for my cell phone to dial 911. But just as my finger was about to press the numbers, I hesitated. I slowly put the phone down. If my mother-in-law's prayers were powerful enough to get her grandchildren into a top high school, surely they would keep them safe now. Mia, I said into the phone, Dad's out of town on a business trip. You need to call your mom or dial 911 right away. There was a 3-second silence on the other end. Dad, I called your office landline. I'm about to leave. The cab is waiting downstairs. I don't have time. I have to go. I hung up the phone and then turned off my cell. My mother-in-law had been bitten several times by the rattlesnakes. Mia had 2 bites on her left calf. Leo had a fever that day and stayed home, so he dodged the bullet. Because they were halfway up a wooded trail and the area was vast, it took a long time for help to arrive. Rattlesnake venom is extremely potent. My mother-in-law was unconscious, and Mia was already experiencing blurred vision and slurred speech. By the time paramedics found them, more than 3 hours had passed since their call for help. They both survived after emergency treatment, but just barely. My mother-in-law had multiple deep bites, and her condition was critical. She suffered from convulsions and foamed at the mouth. The skin around the bites turned black and necrotic. The doctor said this was just the beginning. The muscle tissue in the affected areas would likely die off completely. It was doubtful she would ever walk again. As for Mia, the leg that was bitten was left with numbness and muscle weakness. But that wasn't the worst of it. The doctor explained that the neurotoxin could affect her nervous system, leading to memory loss, difficulty concentrating, and sleep disorders. Her internal organs had also suffered irreversible damage. For a student about to start high school, this was a devastating blow. I didn't show up at the hospital until the 3rd day after the incident. If I was going to lie about being on a business trip, I had to make it look convincing. The moment Eliza saw me, she practically roared. Where have you been? Why haven't you been answering your phone? Mia called you when she was bitten. Why didn't you go help them immediately? If you had gotten paramedics there sooner, they could have gotten the anti-venom in time, and it wouldn't have been this serious. I glanced at the 2 people in the hospital beds. One was semi-conscious. The other was staring blankly at the ceiling. I put on a hurt expression. The company sent me out of town for an emergency. My phone was stolen right after I got there. How was I supposed to know something like this had happened at home? Then I turned the accusation back on her. Wait a minute. I told Mia to call you right away. Didn't you go to them? What kind of mother are you? Eliza was taken aback, her anger deflating. I pressed on, my voice filled with disappointment and fury. One is your mother, the other is your daughter. How could you be so cold-hearted? And you have a nerve to blame me? So tell me, what were you doing that was more important than saving your own mother and daughter? A flicker of guilt crossed her eyes, and her voice softened. I wasn't trying to blame you. It's just, you disappeared for 3 days. I was so worried. All right, she said, changing the subject. What's done is done. There's no point in arguing. You stay here and look after Mom and Mia. I'm going to go home and get a change of clothes. I refused flatly. No, I have a mountain of work to deal with at the office. I have to go back. We should just hire a private nurse for the hospital. Eliza ground her teeth, but in the end, she nodded. Mia was discharged before her grandmother, but she seemed to have developed PTSD. She was plagued by nightmares and couldn't even walk past a patch of dense bushes. Sometimes, the sound of leaves rustling in the wind was enough to make her cover her ears and scream in terror. Seeing her like this, I felt a complicated mix of emotions. There was a time when I truly loved those kids as my own. As for her current state, she could only blame her grandmother's unheeded prayers. In mid-July, it was time for high school registration. Mia was clearly in no condition to start school. I went to the school and filed the paperwork for a medical leave of absence for her. Because of her outstanding entrance exam scores, the administration approved it without any issue. When I handed the official withdrawal form to Mia, she covered her face and burst into tears. She probably already realized that taking time off was just a temporary escape, and that her dream of attending that high school was now gone forever. I sighed silently. This was the last thing I could do for her. I listed our old house with a real estate agent. It was old, but it was in a good school district. It should have been worth at least $500,000. However, I had already arranged for a specific buyer. The deal would close at $300,000. The day before my mother-in-law was scheduled to be discharged, I checked myself into the same hospital. When I asked Eliza for money to pay the hospital deposit, she was stunned. Do you have to be admitted right now? Who's going to take care of my mom when she gets out? I looked at her, her face red with frustration, and handed her the doctor's admission order. I explained that a nodule had been found on my lung, and the doctor recommended immediate surgery. In reality, the nodule was small, but because it was pressing on my windpipe and causing a persistent cough, the doctor thought it was best to remove it sooner rather than later. In my previous life, I had the surgery 3 months later. I was just moving up the timeline. Eliza clutched the admission form, taking several deep breaths. For a moment, I thought she was going to explode. But in the end, she maintained her dutiful wife persona and pulled a bank card from her pocket. I called my cousin, who was on summer break from college, and asked him to come stay with me at the hospital for a few days. On the second day after my surgery, while my cousin was downstairs getting lunch, Eliza showed up with a stack of documents for me to sign. I was still fasting post-op and felt incredibly weak, but she was insistent. She told me a friend of hers had lost his job and was now selling insurance. She wanted us to buy a few short-term policies to help him meet his sales quota. They're not expensive, just one-year policies, $100 or $200 each. Just think of it as doing him a favor, she said. You just need to sign at the bottom. He'll handle the rest. She handed me a pen and pulled out her phone, ready to record me signing. Just then, my cousin walked back in. He'd forgotten his phone. Seeing Eliza pushing me to sign something, he looked surprised. Eliza, what's so urgent that you need my cousin to sign it right now? Look at him. He's so weak he can barely keep his eyes open. Can he even read what he's signing? Let me take a look for him. He reached for the documents. Eliza quickly snatched the papers and stuffed them into her bag, forcing a stiff smile. Oh, look at me. I completely forgot Warren just had surgery. I was so focused on helping my friend. We can wait a few days until he's feeling better. There's no rush. My cousin gave her a suspicious look. You didn't sneak some kind of loan application or something in there, did you? Trying to trick him into signing. It was meant as a joke, but Eliza's face changed dramatically. She dropped her usual gentle demeanor and snapped at him. What are you talking about? And you call yourself a college student? You have no manners. Then she turned and stormed out of the room. My cousin looked completely bewildered. I picked up his phone from a nightstand and handed it to him. I apologized and told him to go get lunch and not to pay any attention to people like Eliza. He grumbled and headed downstairs. The next day, during the doctor's rounds, he told me I should try to get up and walk around a bit to help my digestive system recover. My cousin borrowed a wheelchair and said he'd take me down to the small garden while the morning air was still cool. He helped me walk for about 10 minutes until I got tired, and we sat down on a bench behind a rock garden to rest. Suddenly, a familiar voice drifted over to us. I told you I'd come over tonight. What are you doing here at the hospital so early in the morning? I turned my head toward the sound. It was Eliza, holding a thermos in one hand and hugging Julian's waist with the other, her face a mixture of exasperation and affection. I put a finger to my lips, signaling my cousin to be quiet, and we shifted further behind the rocks. Julian's voice was a playful whine. I just can't stand the thought of you spending 2 hours making that chicken soup for him. He doesn't deserve you being so good to him. Eliza sighed with a smile. You're 40 years old and still getting jealous like a teenager. Don't I cook and make soup for you every time I come over? He's sick, so I'm just bringing him a couple of meals. It's no big deal. You don't want him to get seriously ill, do you? Then who would take care of my mom? Who would do the housework and look after the kids? Unless you want to remarry me, then I'll tell him to get lost right now. Julian scoffed. I'm not that stupid. Why would I give up being the carefree bachelor? I hand the kids over to him. He pays for everything, raises them, educates them. I couldn't find a better nanny or tutor, and this one's free. It's perfect. And your mom? Who can stand her temper? Now that she's half paralyzed, there's no way I could take care of her. I'm clumsy. No, I much prefer our current arrangement. No responsibilities. By the way, he added, did you get him to sign that gift deed to transfer the condo to my name? Eliza's voice grew heavy. No, his damn cousin ruined it. I was so close. It's not that his signature is absolutely necessary, but if he ever found out and decided to sue, it would be a legal loophole. I'll find another chance. Julian laughed it off. I trust you, Professor. I'll be waiting. He reached out and took the thermos from her. Let me try your famous soup on his behalf. I haven't had breakfast yet. Eliza hesitated for a moment, but then opened the thermos for him. Julian smiled sweetly, took a sniff, and then a sip. Blech. He spat the soup back into the thermos, his face wrinkling in disgust. Why is it so bland and greasy? This is awful. He took the lid and screwed it back on. I can't stomach this. You'd better give it to your wonderful husband. Eliza took out a tissue and wiped his mouth. He needs a bland diet after surgery, so I didn't add any salt. The chicken was probably a bit fatty. I'll make you a fresh pot tonight. You wait here. I'll run this up to him, and then I'll drive you home. They walked away, arm in arm, toward the hospital building. My cousin was frozen solid. He turned to look at me, his face streaked with tears. His grip on my wrist was so tight it hurt. I managed a weak smile at him, which only made his tears fall faster. His eyes were red as he choked out, Warren, I want to kill them for you. I want to kill those two bastards. I patted his hand gently to calm him. Death was too easy. I wanted them to live and suffer. When I was discharged, I discovered that Eliza had temporarily moved her mother into a skilled nursing facility. She was just waiting for me to recover before bringing her back for me to take care of. Unbelievable. What a devoted daughter. The real estate agent called to tell me they had a buyer for the house. When Eliza found out I was selling, she was aghast. Are you crazy? If you sell the house, where are we going to live? I smiled. I'm planning to get a bigger place. It's getting too crowded for the family here. She frowned. Where are we going to get the money for that? With my mom's health and Mia's physical therapy, we need every penny. This house might be old, but the location is great. It's so convenient, we don't even need to drive to the hospital. I gave her a meaningful look. I don't have the money, but you do, don't you? You've been making over $100,000 a year since you got your professorship. I've been covering all the household expenses for years. Don't tell me you don't have any savings. Eliza looked uncomfortable. I have some, but it's all tied up in stocks and mutual funds. I can't just pull it out. Seeing her bring up investments herself, I followed her lead. Since you say all your money is invested, I'll need to see a detailed statement. After all, that's marital property. I need to verify that the investment amounts match your income over the years. Of course, she wasn't going to let me see her finances. Most of her money had gone into buying the condo. Whatever she had invested, she had no intention of sharing with me. Fine. I called my lawyer and had him come over to notarize a postnuptial agreement. I wanted Eliza to confirm, in writing, that all investments under her name were to be considered joint marital property. Eliza hesitated, refusing to sign. She glared at me. Warren, what is this? Don't you trust me? I smiled. If you invested your salary, then it's marital property by law. This is just a formality. Unless, is there something you're hiding from me? Of course not. Then why won't you sign? She was cornered. Seeing she still wouldn't sign, I turned to my lawyer. If my wife were to hide or transfer assets behind my back, what are the legal steps I could take to trace her finances? Eliza flinched, and the pen fell from her hand, clattering on the floor. The lawyer understood immediately. He replied seriously. You would need to petition the court for a discovery order. Once granted, your attorney could use it to subpoena all of her financial records, bank accounts, brokerage statements, everything. However, he added, it's a complicated and time-consuming process. It's usually only done in contentious divorce proceedings. Before he could finish, Eliza had snatched the agreement, signed it, pressed her thumbprint on it, and handed it to me. I took it with a placid smile and asked the lawyer to record a video of the notarization for good measure. Compared to losing the condo and the money she was funneling to Julian, giving up 50% of her premarital investments was a small price to pay. A month later, the house finally sold. The closing price was $300,000, and the buyer was a friend I had arranged beforehand. Eliza was in disbelief. She called the agent multiple times to confirm. The agent patiently explained that while it was in a good school district for now, new elementary and middle school campuses were under construction. Within 3 years, the schools would relocate, and this area would become undesirable. Eliza wasn't stupid. She told the agent to get lost, and that the house was no longer for sale. The agent simply produced the contract we had both signed. We have a signed agreement. If you break the contract, you'll be liable for a penalty of 20% of the sale price. I played the role of the mediator. Let's just let it go. $300,000 is not bad. Our neighbor Dave sold his 1,200 square foot place for only $380. In a couple of years, when the schools move, we won't be able to sell it at all. Besides, my dad heard we were planning to upgrade and offered to give us $50,000. We should just sell it now. Dave had indeed sold his house for only $380,000, but that was because he had already bought a new place and sold the old one cheap to his brother-in-law. When Eliza heard my dad was willing to chip in, she fell silent. The day the $300,000 hit my account, I immediately dumped all of it into the stock market. I went long. My friend went short. That money was destined to be completely wiped out. After the house sold, I hired a moving company and told them to take everything to the large condo where Julian was now living. Leo followed me around, his face pale with anxiety. When he realized the address we were moving to was his own mother's secret property, he was so ashamed he looked like he wanted the ground to swallow him whole. I smiled at him. You must be pretty familiar with this place. I bet you even have your own room here. His face flushed a deep red, and he wrung his hands nervously. I knocked on the door. No answer. With Leo watching, I called the police, and then I called a locksmith. I told the police that my property had been illegally occupied. The squatter had not only taken over my home, but had also changed the locks. I presented all my documents, including the official record from the county office with its official stamp. With the locksmith's help, I got the door open. Just as the movers finished bringing in the last of our things, Julian showed up, his arms full of shopping bags. He saw us and threw the bags at me. "Get out of my house," he screamed. "Eliza bought this place for me. It has nothing to do with you." I pulled out my marriage certificate and waved it in his face. "This is marital property, belonging to me and Eliza. You're the one who needs to get out." The police officer on the scene confirmed it for him. The condo was registered in Eliza's name, making it joint property. He had to vacate immediately, and if I chose to press charges, he could be liable for financial damages. Julian froze, tears welling up in his eyes. He fumbled for his phone to call Eliza, hoping she could come and fix this. I just watched him with a cold smile. Eliza could barely save herself right now. She had no time to worry about him. 2 days earlier, I had mailed the evidence of their affair, collected over the past few weeks by a private investigator, to both the ethics committee and the dean at the university where Eliza worked. I figured she was probably in the middle of an investigation right now. Eliza found out what I had done as soon as she got off work, but she didn't explode at me. Instead, she came to me and knelt on the floor, begging for my forgiveness. She claimed she had only let Julian stay there temporarily and hadn't told me because she was afraid I would misunderstand. After a long-winded, nonsensical explanation, she begged me to go to my father and see if he could pull some strings to make this whole unprofessional conduct issue go away. Otherwise, her career would be ruined. She promised she would break things off with Julian completely, and that from now on, she would be a devoted wife to me. I looked down at her the entire time, saying nothing. An ethics violation? That was nothing. A much bigger storm was about to hit her. Using the excuse of going to talk to my dad on her behalf, I moved back in with my parents. I was mainly afraid of what she might do to me when she couldn't take the pressure anymore. A while back, I had come across one of Eliza's old, discarded laptops. Curious to see if there was anything useful on it, I spent a couple $100s to have it repaired. On that old computer, I found the proof I needed, evidence of her plagiarism. Nearly 30% of her published doctoral dissertation was a direct, translated copy of a foreign academic paper. Some of her core arguments were lifted verbatim, and her research methodology was almost identical. And she had saved a copy of the original foreign paper right there on the old hard drive. I sent all the information to the academic journal that had published her dissertation, formally reporting her for plagiarism. It didn't take long. The journal quickly published a formal retraction of her paper and removed it from all academic databases. They also blacklisted her permanently. At the same time, the journal forwarded the evidence of her academic misconduct back to the university. The school immediately formed an investigative committee and launched a full inquiry. And then something happened that truly surprised me. Kevin, her colleague, filed a formal, public complaint against Eliza, accusing her of stealing his research, selling co-authorship credits on papers, and inflating budget requests for research grants, pocketing the difference. I only found out later why he had been so ruthless. After the graduation party, Kevin's wife had demanded a divorce. She had heard the rumors before, and that night was the final straw. No matter how much Kevin begged, she wouldn't change her mind. Devastated, Kevin went to a bar to drink himself into a stupor and stumbled upon Eliza and Julian kissing. He flew into a rage and tried to attack Julian, but Eliza slapped him hard across the face in front of everyone. It was only then that Kevin realized he had been nothing but a fool she had strung along for years, a fool who had willingly handed over his own research to her. So, in a fit of rage, he reported everything he knew. Seeing that everyone else was piling on, I struck while the iron was hot. I filed for divorce and sued Eliza for bigamy, as well as for the fraudulent concealment and transfer of marital assets. She managed to dodge the first 2 court dates, citing various last-minute emergencies. The case was temporarily postponed. Leo, probably still clueless about the family drama, called me, yelling about his allowance. "I've texted you 1,000,000 times for money. Are you just pretending you don't see them?" I didn't have the patience for his whining. I hung up and blocked his number on every platform. After a 2-month investigation, the university revoked Eliza's professorship, citing moral turpitude and academic fraud. They terminated her contract and stripped her of all positions. She was also required to pay back all the grant money and stipends she had embezzled. The day after Eliza was fired, I got a call from the nursing home. They said my mother-in-law had suffered sudden respiratory failure and passed away before they could even get an ambulance there. I relayed the news to Eliza. The other end of the line was silent for a long time. I didn't attend the funeral, claiming I was unwell. Their family's problems were no longer my concern. That night, while I was working late at the office, I got another call from the police. They told me Eliza had fallen into the Cedar Creek Reservoir. Luckily, a night fisherman had found her, pulled her out, and called 911. She had been taken to the city hospital. I drove to the hospital. Eliza was out of immediate danger, but her leg had been badly gashed by something sharp underwater. Due to the prolonged immersion, a severe infection had set in. The doctor presented me with 3 treatment options and was about to explain them. I cut him off. "Just tell me which option is the cheapest." The doctor hesitated. "The cheapest option would be amputation, but..." "Then we'll amputate." I didn't hesitate for a second. The doctor was taken aback. "We could consider a vascular graft or transplant surgery. We don't necessarily have to amputate. The patient is not even 40 yet. She's so young." I was firm. "Just amputate it. I don't have the money for any of that other stuff. Where's the consent form? I'll sign it." With a complicated expression, the doctor handed me the form. I signed my name with a flourish. It was no joke. We were still legally married. I would be responsible for half of every medical bill she incurred. I was absolutely going to choose the most cost-effective solution. After the surgery, when Eliza woke up, she was in a daze, unable to distinguish the past from the present. I picked up her phone and dialed Julian's number. She looked at me as if I were a fool. Then, Julian's crying voice came through the speaker. "Eliza, where have you been? I couldn't reach you. Leo's teacher called, said he's got a girlfriend and isn't focusing on his studies. Mia's not doing well mentally either. What am I going to do?" Hearing Julian's voice, Eliza began to tremble violently. "Julian," she asked in disbelief, "you're alive? But you died of pancreatic cancer 2 years ago." She looked at me, her eyes filled with tears, as if seeking confirmation. "Are you losing your mind, too?" Julian's voice on the phone was sharp. "I'm fine. What pancreatic cancer?" Eliza was frantic. "What did you say happened to Mia? Are they being bullied over there?" Julian sounded exasperated. "Are you crazy? It's because your mother took her to release those snakes in the hills. She got bitten." Eliza's body shook, her pupils constricting. She shot up in bed and threw back the covers, trying to get up. When she saw that she only had one leg, she froze completely. There are no words to describe the look on her face. A whirlwind of shock, horror, and utter devastation. She stared at her severed limb for a long, silent moment, and then all the strength seemed to drain out of her. She collapsed back onto the bed. Minutes later, a gut-wrenching, animalistic scream echoed through the hospital room. Eliza still refused to appear for our divorce proceedings. But the evidence I provided was overwhelming, and the judge proceeded with a default judgment. Because she was the party at fault, she was awarded only 40% of the marital assets. Custody of the children, naturally, went to her. The court also ordered Julian to return all the money Eliza had illegally transferred to him. After the lawyers tallied everything up, I got the house. She got her car, what was left of her investments, and the money she'd spent on Julian over the years. Luckily, the housing market was down, and the condo was only valued at around 6 or 700,000. If this had happened 10 years later, when prices had tripled, I would have been cleaned out. Free from that family of parasites, my life became my own. I quit my job, bought an RV, and decided to see the country while I was still young, documenting my journey on video. To my surprise, the videos I uploaded to the internet gained a huge following, and I started making money. I became a full-time travel vlogger. The next time I heard any news about Eliza was 2 years later. I was having dinner with friends, and someone brought her up. They said she had caused a massive scene at Julian's engagement party, smashing up hotel property and decorations. Julian called the police. She had to pay for the damages and was detained for 15 days. After she got out, she started drinking heavily, letting herself go completely. And Leo never finished high school. Because Eliza and Julian often forgot to send him money for living expenses, he ended up moving in with a rich girl from his school. He was hoping for a meal ticket. When the school found out, they expelled him. Eliza, dragging her prosthetic leg, went to the girl's family to raise hell, but they turned it around on her, claiming Leo was selling himself. In the end, the family paid $60,000 to make the problem go away. The rich girl went back to school without a scratch. But that $60,000 was the price of Leo's future. Hearing this, I couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness. I thought about my own past and sighed quietly. When a young person's life goes off track, it's so hard to find the way back. Later, I heard that Julian's pancreatic cancer had returned. His fiancée broke up with him as soon as she found out. He went back to look for Eliza, only to find that she had vanished. No one knew where she went. Time flew by. Another 2 years passed. I lost my passion for constant travel, and before the housing market boomed again, I bought a small house with a yard. I got a cat and a dog and filled the yard with flowers. One evening after dinner, I was walking my dog in the park near our neighborhood when I heard a trembling voice behind me. "Dad!" I turned around. It was Mia. She walked with a slight limp, her left leg dragging just a little. She was wearing a blue-gray work uniform with Pioneer Industrial stitched over the breast pocket. Her eyes were red, her expression emotional. I was startled for a moment, then offered a gentle smile. "I'm not your dad anymore. You can call me Warren." She flinched, and tears began to stream down her face. The little dog I was holding strained at the leash, eager to run ahead. I gave Mia a helpless smile. "Snowball's a handful. He probably wants to go play up ahead. I'll take him now, but you should come by the house sometime." I turned and continued walking, but my vision started to blur. For a fleeting moment, I could almost see them again, more than a decade ago. A shy little girl and a little boy with wide, curious eyes. They were so small, looking up at me. The boy asked, "Who are you? Why are you at our house?" "I'm your new dad." Both of their faces lit up with excitement. They threw themselves at me, wrapping their little arms around me and cheering. "We have a dad. I'm going to tell all the kids at preschool that I have a handsome dad now." How do we ever end up like this?